Hello, everybody, and welcome to our session. This would be session number 6. So this time we are going to talk about timestamps in RTIs. So we will go through, what timestamps are, what RTI is within Rapidi, and then I will show you a bit in Rapidi how that's being set up and, how it looks like. So let's take a look at the agenda for today. So first we start with the basics. So we have datetime and timestamp. What's the difference? So then we know for sure how to take a look at them and how to distinguish them. And then we'll talk about RTI, what that is. Then how source control works with RTI. Then I will go into Rapidi and talk about timestamps in combination with this RTI. Afterwards, questions, if you have any questions, and then I will guide you through the upcoming sessions that we have. We have a full calendar. And then the last one would be resources. If you have questions, you can always use the chat at any point in time, and then I can go through them during the session. Now, let's talk a bit about datetime and timestamps, right? So when we say timestamp, that can mean something specific for one system, and it can mean something else for the other system, right? So we have two main categories, so to speak. So we have datetime fields. So this one is human readable, right? So you can see that specific date and time, right? When a record has been created, for example, or has been updated. So it's easy to understand what that is. Then we have a different type of timestamp, so to speak. So this is more like a raw version. So you actually see this in older systems. So it's like a system generated integer, and it's actually a raw version. So it has this like long number that you see, and that is actually keeping track of all new records and updated ones. Of course, when we talk about datetime, timestamps, or anything that you use to keep track of all changes, you have to be aware of the fact that this field has to be indexed. So you have to make sure that's being indexed in that specific source system, because when you are going to run your transfers or data flow, those will run based on your source control, which would be a datetime or a timestamp field. And of course, in some systems, you do have to publish this field. So for example, you have it in Business Central. It's there, it's a system field, but it's not available on the page itself. So the end user cannot see that. So in order for you to actually use it, it has to be published and deployed, make it available, and then you can query on that specific table and get the information that you need. So this is very important before we dive into more complicated things. Now, what is RTI? So RTI, it's called the runtime information. So this is the place in Rapidi where system and phase related information is kept. So this is related to your transfer runs only, right? So everything, so when it comes to your transfer runs, in how many times it ran, and then how many times the timestamp went forward, you will be able to see that in the RTI. So this is like a reference book that Rapidi will always check, right, every time your transfer runs. So then the RTI is used in combination with source control, right? Because when you want to transfer data, you will be using a source control, which is a datetime or a timestamp field. And then when the source control is enabled on the transfer, Rapidi will use the RTI to store and retrieve the watermark, meaning the point in time up to which data was last successfully transferred. So then Rapidi will always know when was the last time you ran this transfer, right? And then if there are new updates, there are new records, then this RTI will move forward in time, right? And of course, it's important to say that the RTI is only created, so you can see an entry, for those transfers where you have source control enabled, right? So for example, if you've never run the transfer, you'll never see an RTI entry because there's nothing. There is no data that has been transferred to the other system. Then Of course, we want to talk a bit about how source control works with RTI. So then when your transfer runs and you have source control, Rapidi will capture the highest value of the source control field, right? So it will read all the records and then will capture the highest one. Let's say everything run up until today's date and time. And then what Rapidi will do will store that value in the RTI entry. Then, when you have the next run, Rapidi will query the source for those records where the source control is greater than what has been stored. For example, if you have your transfer running at 10 a.m., so the transfer runs completely, everything is fine, you have your RTI value. Then you have the transfer running again at 10:30. Then Rapidi will check, right? It will look back and see, okay, which is the highest value, right, of the source control? Is there anything that has changed within that half an hour? And then if within that half an hour you got new records created, or let's say some of them updated, then Rapidi will update the RTI as well and will move forward. So via this process, I would say Rapidi will pull only what has changed since the last run. And of course, the RTI is created when you run your transfer for the first time. So you run it with your source control, and then when that's done, you should be able to see the RTI entry. Of course, if you did not run it before, then you will not see anything. It will be empty, so there will be no entry for that. Now, when it comes to RTI, you can do some things there. So you can reset the RTI if you want like a full resync. So in order for you to do that, you would set 0 in the source control field on the RTI page. And then the next time this runs, we'll pull all the records from the source, right? So then, and then this happens because Rapidi will look at the source control value that's greater than 0, right? So then it will pick up everything. And then you can also reset the RTI to a specific value. So if you want to do that, you can edit the source control field on the RTI page and then set up something that you need. And then your transfer will run from that particular point onwards. So that would be this part. I'm going to share my screen so you can see that. Okay, so this is the RTI page. So when you log into Rapidi, you'll always see this one here. And then if you have transfers that have been running, then you will see an entry for each one of them. As you can see here, you have a list that consists of specific, I would say, columns, right? So you have the transfer, which would be the transfer code. You have the source, which would be the source system, and then you would have destination, which would be the destination system, the source control, which would be the value, the RTI value being stored, and then here you have action. So here it's pretty clear when it comes to the transfer code. So you have that here on the transfers. The source and destination are always on the transfer, and then the important piece is this one here that says source control. So then when my transfer runs, if there are new updates, new records, then this will always move forward. So this is in a Unix format, right? So it's something that, is converted within Rapidi. So for example, if you're using a datetime field, then that specific datetime field is converted to this value, which can be actually, I would say, converted back to a specific datetime if you need to, because you can use those Unix timestamps websites, and they would give you the specific value for that. The idea here is that this is going to record everything, right? So then you don't need, you don't necessarily need to do anything about it when your transfers are running, and it's just usual business. Now, what happens here is that you can make changes in this case. So, for example, if I want to change something here, I can click on the edit pencil, and then here I can put 0. So then if I put 0, this will have a full resync. You put 0 and then you save it, right? Like one example here, like I have this transfer that has 0 because I wanted to go back to the beginning, so to speak, and wanted to have a full sync, but I have not run it yet. So this is one example. And then here you also you can change the value that you have in here. Then the action here, you can go to your transfer, the one that this is linked to, or you can delete the RTI. In my case, for example, I want to go to my transfer here, right? So this would be the transfer that I have. I have a transfer that's using a source control field, right? And then every time I'm running this one, or maybe it's running part of a schedule, then my RTI will also be updated. Now, you can access RTI via two different ways, I would say. One, just go here where you have it up top, or you can also go here. So you have this icon here, and it will show you the RTI for this transfer. So you have two ways to do it, and then if you need to check that information, you can do it there without any issues. But I think if you go here, you should be able to see a full list of all your transfers, right? So that would be, I think, pretty easy. Now, if your transfers are running, as usual, everything is up to date, you have a source control, then you really don't need to do anything about the RTI. However, if you think that you need like a full resync, if you, like, for example, need to bring everything over to the other system, you can reset the value here and then run the transfer again. So those, I think, are like one-time thing that you would need to do, in very specific situations. But other than that, everything should run as usual, and then you should not have any type of issues related to the source control that's being recorded here, because this one is being updated based on what you are using as a source control. So it's something that relies on what you use as a source control in your own system. So I think that was that. Now, what we want to have here, like key takeaways, so to speak. So you have to remember that when we talk about RTI, this behaves as an internal reference book for your source control. It only exists for those transfers where your source control is enabled. Every RTI entry is unique. So we'll have a combination of the transfer code, what you just saw earlier, right? It will have a source and a destination. And then from the RTI page, you can go straight to the transfer. And then from the transfer, you also have the RTI icon if you need to check it. Then the RTI is going to be moved forward or updated at the end of the successful run, right? And then if the transfer fails, then the RTI does not move forward because, right, it does want to pick everything from the source system. So then if it fails, then Rapidi during the next run will retry from the same point where it was left off, right? And then Datetime is human readable. So this is something very easy to look at. Any user can see it and can understand what that is. And then in other systems, you can have a raw version, which is just the sequence number that's unique and given to a specific action, right? And of course, this does not have any meaning, like date meaning for you. Like you cannot convert that and say, oh, this actually refers to today's date and time. No, it's just that specific number that will tell us that we have a new record or an update. Of course, you can use other type of fields as source control, but again, that has to be checked within your systems, and you have to see what you have right now. And then, as I mentioned before, the value that's being stored in your RTI depends entirely on which field you have chosen as the source control, right? Because if you're using as source control, let's say a big integer, then you'll have that stored in the RTI. If you are using a raw version, then that's the sequence number that you will be seeing there, right? So depending on what you are using, you would see a different, I would say, format for those specific values. In order for you to reset the RTI, like I said, add a 0, you'll have a full resync or a specific value if you want to target a specific rerun. And the source control field that you are using has to be indexed available for filtering, and in some systems it has to be published or deployed. So it's really important to use a source control at all times. So do not run transfers without source control, because that will have an impact on that specific system, and it will create a huge load for the source system. When you use a source control and you have it indexed, then performance-wise, everything runs faster, and you do not load the system, and you do not give it a lot of, I would say, pressure, right, when trying to query all those tables. So remember that when you set up your transfers, so that your data is transferred fast and without any issues with regards to the source system that you have. Now let's see if you have any questions here. No questions, so it means I explained this very well. But of course, if you have questions afterwards, or maybe you need clarifications about the specific topic, just reach out and we can definitely help with that. Now we have upcoming sessions. So here, the first URL is about the main page. So all the sessions that we have. Then we have the complete season 1, where you can choose the sessions for which you want to register. So there are plenty of them. So go ahead and do that. And then the next session will be about continue on error and data errors, which I think this is a really interesting topic. Hopefully people will be joining. And if you need to join for other sessions that we have, for example, next month, you can register now and then have access to all the materials that we will be sending at the end of the session. And here, this is the complete schedule for our season 1. So you can choose any of those sessions. And if you have ideas about specific topics that we should cover, you can also reach out to us, or you can add that information in our survey. So either way, for us, it works. We just want to say, we just want to know what would be a good topic to cover or to discuss about, or maybe specific issues. So just let us know. This is our feedback form. You can go ahead and add comments, anything you want. So go ahead and just tell us your opinion, or maybe ideas, improvements, anything that you think it's relevant. Here we have our general resources. So we have our documentation. It's our wiki or knowledge repository. So if you're using it and it's all good, then we are happy. But if you are using it, but you cannot find certain information, then please let us know so we can update the content, or maybe add more in there. Then if you need to reach out to support, you can do that. You have the support URL there. You can submit a case also on the website. We also have our product updates. If you want to subscribe, you should get great content into your inbox and read about that. And we have our product release notes, which are really great, because then you have all the information that you need about every release, what we have included there, if we have new functionalities, if we have fixes, and everything like that. So you can go ahead and check that as well. And if you have any questions, of course, you can let us know, and we will be happy to help. And the resources specific to the session, so I've added here a few links. The first one is about the Rapidi RTI, more details about it and what it means and how it works. Then the Rapidi source control, how it's being used, and how you need to use it. Then also another article about publishing a datetime field. I added this one because before I mentioned that there are systems where you do need to publish it and deploy it into your production environment. So this one is, I would say, a detailed article about that, and could help you to actually publish that field and have it available on those specific objects or tables that you are using. And then another part would be source control section, which consists of more details about source control and the options that you have there. So I think we covered everything for today. Of course, if you have any questions, need anything, please reach out. we would be happy to help. And as I said, if you have any ideas about any topics that you want us to cover, also let us know, because we would like to prepare more content and be able to walk you through, specific functionalities, or maybe scenarios that you are running into when you are managing your integration. That would be it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.